Okay, I think we can begin. Happy holidays, everybody. Well, and welcome to Drupal for Gov's December webinar. Our topic for today will be Bridging the Gap, Achieving Government Agency Goals Through Strategic Delivery. And our speakers today are Aimee Hannaford and Sean Lehane. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did. Perfect. Thank you.
So before I hand over the reins to the speakers, I kind of want to talk about Drupal for Gov and what we do. We are a community of open source advocates, and we love all things open source. So in addition to this webinar that we hold every third Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard, we also have a wonderful conference that is held normally at the end of September. We also do global training days and half training days, and we participate in the Gov Summit at DrupalCon, which will be held this next year in Atlanta, Georgia in March, I believe. If you're interested in doing a webinar or have any questions, always reach out to us. We have an email, drupalforgov@gmail.com. We're also available on Slack and LinkedIn. I have to give a special shout out to our webinar sponsors. We cannot do this without them. Palantir.net. They develop solutions for healthcare, higher educations, and they have a new project out called Edit Together. So check it out at palantir.net/edit together. And I always have to share other upcoming events that are happening in our community, the Drupal community. February 21st through the 23rd, Florida Camp. March 13th through the 15th, Drupal Camp in New Jersey. March 24th through the 27th is DrupalCon. And I believe they had speaker selections yesterday. And May 20th through the 22nd is MidCamp, which is held in Chicago, Illinois. We're always looking for places to host some of our half-day events. If you work within an organization or a company that has the space, we love to talk to you. Please reach out to us at info@drupalforgov.us. If you miss a webinar, and as a matter of fact, we are live streaming now to the YouTube channel. You can always check us out there. And last but definitely not least, I would like to introduce Aimee Hannaford. She is an experienced leader in digital transformation and over 25 years of experience managing and building enterprise-grade websites and environments, and also Sean Lehane, Senior Project Manager and Senior Program Manager at Kalamuna. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, here, let me get this going. Can you see everything?
I think so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this talk today. So yeah, our talk is called "Bridge the Gap: Achieving Government Agency Goals Through Strategic Delivery." And a bit about me. So as was said, I'm a senior program and project manager here at Kalamuna. I've been in the digital space for 15 plus years, developing and launching digital products across all sorts of different sectors: government, entertainment, not-for-profit, higher ed as well. I work for Kalamuna, and Aimee has worked with Kalamuna as well. And it's a digital agency, a full service end-to-end digital agency that builds digital products for mission-driven organizations. So in addition to all that, I'm also a horror writer I have a podcast. I write weird horror stories, and I live in Toronto, Canada. Over to you, Aimee.
Hi, my name is Aimee Hannaford, and I've been working in the Drupal space for a long time. I used to run an agency just like Kalamuna, and I've taken some time off for life. And I've been working in the digital transformation space, large scale infrastructure, CMS, that type of thing for 25 years for multiple industry verticals in the public and the private sector. So I've seen a lot of things. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and in my spare time, I listen to Sean's podcasts. They're great. All right.
All right, so what are we going to do here? So first off, we're going to give a little overview of why we are here, and then we're going to review a bit of a case study, an example program that sort of became the basis of this talk. We're going to then outline rather our program approach that we used when working with this client, as well as then move into very common challenges and resolutions that we saw along the way, and then go into some summaries and takeaways for you folks, and finish it with the Q&A. So why are we here? Aimee, would you like to say why we are here giving this webinar?
That's a bit of an existential question for a Thursday. But why are we giving this webinar? Well, both Sean and I have a combined over 30 years of experience, and we still see the same situations and obstacles and failures across all of our clients, and the agency or public sector ones have some very specific challenges that everybody is here to listen and talk about and share. But a lot of the material that teaches us how to be a PM doesn't actually teach us the subtleties of how to actually not just execute a project, but to be really excellent on that project and become partners. And these are like more human skills tied to those tools and the technologies.
So some of the outcomes that we're hoping to get out of today for you folks is, we want to engage in a candid dialogue. So feel free to ask questions and ask challenging questions. We're here to answer them. We're hoping that you'll be able to, learn how to apply a lot of the basic project and program management practices and tools that you learn in the PMI and such, but in a very real example, real world program with a government agency. So hopefully everyone should be able to level up their PM game, build confidence, and fundamentally improve the likelihood of success for you and for your projects and programs going forward.
Thanks, Sean. All right, so how did Sean and I meet? Well, we met working on the 511.org website and the overall web program for the MTC, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And it encompasses mainly the 9 Bay Area counties, and it covers over 21,000 miles of local streets. And it's like 7.8 million residents here look to this one homepage for a lot of their traffic and transportation and transit information, especially when it's disrupted. And it's one of the most sophisticated and heavily used traveler systems in the nation. And who makes this website? It's a utility grade website. It also helps service and distribute data to multiple different people and systems. So inside the MTC, we have government agency transportation specialists, and we have internal segment specialists that do emergency response and car pools, some specific to transit, traffic, and transport, all which are different, but they all start with a T. And that's very important in the whole theme of this, right? It's the language and words have meaning. And they have internal transportation operation teams that manage bridge outages and, wildfire responses and that type of thing. But also other public agencies we send a lot of data to and get data from the MTC. So the train system, the California Highway Patrol, multiple transit providers like BART, and the county-based bus systems. But then there's a lot of external contract partners that are specialists in their domains. So we've got designers and branding and signage for all, these different areas for the MTC. And then we have the people and groups that provide proprietary transportation management systems, and I'm going to call them opaque containers, but they're like black box systems. And then there's also Drupal websites and complex systems integrations. A lot of these are multi-year support contracts because it's a big investment with the team. And Kalamuna in this project is this combination of the proprietary transportation management system that was integrated to their older website. It was one big application, but also they're at newer, I'm going to air quote that because it was newer of 2019, Drupal website and complex integrations. And the big thing is they were moving away from these opaque containers, these black box systems.
Moving. That's actually a great segue into this slide. Moving. What we found, and I'd love to hear feedback if you folks work in any government agencies. What we're seeing is a lot of parallel paradigm shifts going on at the government agency spaces. There's a paradigm shift that's been going on for a long time, but moving away from traditional program and project management practices to agile on far extremes. We've also seen, and we don't really dive into it in this talk, but there are other talks that we've given on this particular topic. But we've seen a shift as well in government from proprietary systems to open source across North America. And what's happening is that we haven't fully moved in 100% to the extreme of in any of these things. And so the MTC and lots of government agencies are sort of right here in the middle. They have some aspects of their program and projects that are traditional. They have some aspects that they really want to be agile or hybrid. Same with proprietary closed source black box applications, but they want to move toward open source and open data. And they're just sort of stuck right in the middle. So there's a lot of push and pull going on. Procedures, contracts, roadmaps, and deliverables and such are very traditional, but how we go about delivering software tends to be more agile these days. So, another point here is that this spectrum that I just shared on the last slide is, also represents the push and pull between how agencies want to be innovative. There's a lot of reason for digital transformation in government, a lot of reason to move forward with these initiatives, and a lot of reason why they're not moving forward in the way that some companies like us would really love to see. And it's because change is risky, right? We see these are 3 stats. You can find lots of similar comparable stats. 70% of digital projects over $1 million fail. 30% of digital transformations succeed. According to 18F, only 13% of projects over a certain budget threshold, government projects, actually succeed. So there's a lot of failure, if you will, in the industry, the broader industry. So there's a lot of reticence to make change. And change is risky, change is hard, it's scary. And when it comes to a utility, you can't break utilities. That's like a #1 rule they put on the poster when you walk in the door. So why do transformations fail? Why do we see digital transformation fail across any kind of industry, but especially in government? I would say first, there's from the top a lack of vision, a lack of prioritization, a lot of unrealistic expectations that are shared, and a lot of misunderstanding of real customer needs. Aimee,
yeah, and organizationally, there might be a lot of resistance to change at many levels because it works right now. It works fine. Why do we need to do it? But also change sometimes is scary because it might impact somebody's job.
Yep. And when things do happen, especially in technology, no plan actually executes exactly the way it was articulated on day one. So when those pivots have to come up and those decisions have to be made to make change happen, there's a lack of agility that we see in leadership.
Yeah, and then sometimes you have some poor technology management, or you're stuck with in a place where you have some legacy systems, and they provide technological constraints that you have to work around and work through until you can bring in a bigger change.
Exactly. And overall, in a government space, we see this in all industries, but a government space in particular, we see a lack of trained technology people in the organization, right? And that makes sense. That's why they go and they hire digital agencies and outside firms to implement digital change for them.
Yeah, and the real big takeaway here is navigating and also measuring uncertainty is difficult, whether you have to do it on a traditional waterfall way or an agile way. It's difficult, especially for the governance needs of public agencies, of saying, hey, I think the concept of a digital transformation is great. What does that actually mean? And how do we adapt and change as we move forward? So we're going to talk a little bit about our approach.
So,
Oh,
yes, if you want to move on to the next one.
yeah.
Right. Thank you. So, when we started with working with the MTC, it was a multi-year contract, a multiple million-dollar contract. This was not just a small project that we could just, grab a set of principles from the PMI and just run as a project. It was a multi-tiered program. And given all of the nuance and complexities and push and pull that we described earlier, we really sat down and had to think about how to shape the program. And what we're going to talk about for the rest of these slides are strategies that sort of fall into what we see as these three program priority theme areas. The first being fostering partnership and trust. Second to this is making considered technology choices. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is how to develop a growth mindset to not only develop it, but maintain it both internally and externally with your partners and such. So these are not three different, siloed things. Do one, complete one, move on to two, complete two. These are things that we do all throughout the program, and they feed back into each other and such.
And what we were doing is, let's start with some of the trust. And we create trust through delivery. But what is trust anyway? Because a concept of partnership is all built on trust. Well, there's an equation for that for all of us logical engineering type of people. It's called the trust equation, and it's from the Trusted Advisor book and the Trusted Advisor group. I put the link in here for reference. So trustworthiness or trust is a combination of credibility, which is the words that we speak. So that is, how credible are you on the topic of Drupal? Then there's reliability, and that has to do with your actions. Oh, we are credible because our portfolio looks like all of these successes of websites. And then it's intimacy. And this is the safety or security that we feel when entrusting someone with something. And it's vulnerability. It's talking openly. It's feeling safe to do that and allowing safety of others. And in part of this equation, intimacy is one of the leading core. It's the highest correlation of trust. So you could be credible and reliable, but if you don't have this vulnerability and intimacy with another person, it's going to be harder to get trustworthiness. I'm going to talk about self-orientation because it's on the bottom. It's the denominator, and it refers to a person's focus. In particular, whether it's all about me or it's all about myself or oneself? Or is it really client focused or solution focused, problem focused? The more focused you are on yourself, uh, it really drops the level of trustworthiness. So the more client focused that you are, and the more solution, like shared group solution focus, that really increases the trust. And it's a huge, huge impact to the overall trust equation. And I'm going to go on through. And so how do you start doing that? And how did we start doing that? So it started with pre-sales. So Calamuna was like, hey, what you doing while you're going to school? And I came on and I helped with the pre-sales and the contract engagement. And this is really important. Even though you don't have an official full partnership yet, that's when you start showing your credibility through the RFP response, through the questions you ask, the bios and portfolios you present, and your references. It also has self-orientation and intimacy, even though it's a little bit disconnected. You mirror your client's needs through what you say in your RFP response. And then you also have this active listening through the writing, which is giving good valuable response to these requests. And that's where you can see the RFP response quality. The clients can read that and say, oh, hey, I feel that that team has heard what we need and is responding in a way that connects with us. And it's also reliability, because the ability to deliver a complete, lengthy, detailed items in a timely and correct manner in sometimes convoluted or challenging government processes is like a true sign that they could do this in the future, going through internal processes, budgets, and everything.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. Did you want to jump in and say anything? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, well, I
Okay.
was just going to, I completely agree. And, after going through that pre-sales and contract engagement period that almost any agency would go through when taking on a contract like this, it was a bit unique. We had a 30-day window, a transition window with the leaving consultant, where, they had been working with the MTC for 15 years, and we had 30 days to learn everything we possibly could from them, as well as begin the orientation process with our new clients. And this was a period where we really had to focus on the intimacy side of that part of the equation, right? Because it's like when you're hiring someone, you can get a stack of resumes that clearly prove that everyone has credibility, they can all do the job and such, but it's only through actually sitting down and talking to people do you start to develop a sense of whether or not you can actually trust a person to get the work done the way that you need to get it done. So,
Yeah, and it was an amazing opportunity, though, because
yeah.
sometimes on regular projects, you're like, okay, well, we'll meet next week and then we'll have a couple of meetings. But this one was like, oh no, hit the ground running. We were in workshops for hours with them every day, because there was so much stuff that this leaving consultant was responsible for, so little time. And also in the contract, there's this little line item is, you must demonstrate that you have fully understood what they have told us. So it was interesting, but it was this wonderful opportunity to ask almost about anything about, people, process, the technology. And what we also did too is I took the contract and they set it up to make sure every single contract item was connected to a meeting and a document, because we had to correlate. I've heard, or not self-orientation, hello. But I was the one actively doing that task. So, but we as a group were doing it. But we correlate the contract to a deliverable output. And we shared it, was very open and transparent to say, hey, this is what we've done in response to this. What do you think? And it's very important here, because you only get one time and one chance to meet someone the first time. So you want to make sure that you have a really nice, open and positive relationship, even when it's got these challenges. And then, so we were, first of all, 30 days is not enough sometimes, because It depends on how much the other team is prepared. So we were getting to know them and quickly and intimately. And what we found out here, we had to overcome stigmas and sins of the past. And the leading partner was really nice and kind of engaged, but they weren't really super prepared. And so we had unaligned self-orientation from both parts of the team. They're like, hey, I'm done. Thanks for the time. And then we were like, hey, we're ready to go. So there's a misalignment there. And jump in whenever, Sean, if you want to. I like, here. But also we quickly identified low-hanging fruit as we were going through these like review and handoff workshops. So what could be improved, and that was so we could establish reliability and credibility in the things that we knew well. And then we also really saw that there was a lot of single point of failure feeling from the last contractor. And so we said, oh, there can never be only one person, tool, that type of thing. We just need to make sure that there's always a backup. And really, this is important to engage your full team. And we were changing our words to set the tone because they had a lot of trigger words tied to their existing systems, the way they did it before, and that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's quite right. So we had to, establish, as I was saying before, establish our own sort of patterns of intimacy to, really set ourselves apart from the people that were leaving. Because as you said, the people who are leaving, great people, but they're already mentally checked out. And, we're coming in brand new, ready to go. So those are two very misaligned positions to be in. And then the client, of course, had this thing that they called a black box. It was a black box piece of software and such that they had emotional reaction to based on lack of integration, documentation and such. So we had to really get in there and prove to them or demonstrate to them that we could handle it. Demonstrate as well that we could handle support across a lot of their digital landscape, that we had to build that level of trust with them. And yeah, we had to put the code and information on the client-owned systems. And this was something that we thought was very key. And when working with a vendor, oftentimes it's very segregated and siloed, but we wanted to make the partner feel like they were owning every bit of our work along the way, and that we could be as transparent with them as possible. Because that's really, as we say here, the only way to really be able to figure out how to manage uncertainty together.
And so remember that pandemic thing? Well, that's when this project started. And it was all about the tactics we used, the team we had, and the timing. So the people coming in to this, we had to be very aware and mindful that this is a utility grade project. The people we're dealing with are specialists in what they do, but they're also absolutely saying, hey, you guys know the web stuff and the web technology, even though they actually are really deeply understanding what the technology they have and how they apply it to do what they need to do every day. But we really had a lot of this humility and shared responsibility across all the teams. So Kalamuna had, I think our partner team was, I believe, 5 organizations focusing on 24/7 support and focusing on transportation and the mapping. We had a lot of different specialty teams, so we had to make sure that we were all there. But because it was during the pandemic and people were going through this open vulnerability of fear and being, mindful of it, it really helped us have an opportunity to have that shared intimacy type. But it was really interesting because the process, we had to make sure we found the right speed, right? And I tend to speak fast and I want to go very quickly. So I'm going to let Sean speak now. Because this is what happened. This is exactly what happens when we were working together, is we had a point where we transitioned to the other person because sometimes another voice is better.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And in the beginning, a lot of times when working with a new partner, you want to impress, right? And we wanted to do weekly deployments and just a constant state of testing and really just pump out tickets and show a lot of progress really, really quickly. That's a natural tendency. But that can bite people the wrong way and can set yourself up for failure if you're not able, because most people aren't able to maintain that level of throughput over time. So we went to work with them, go back and forth, and really identify what that right speed, that optimal speed was going to be. We created a planned set of deployments, a year out. Whether or not we needed to do a deployment every 2 or 3 weeks, whatever the schedule was, we could always cancel. But as long as things were getting put into a map, a calendar for people, we were building a sense of consistency and a sense of technological trust, if you will. And then, of course, we had impromptu things that would come up, a bug, a CVE alert, something in Drupal needed to be patched immediately. Had the
The
capacity.
Friday afternoon security.
Yeah, at 6
Always
p.m.
Friday at
Eastern.
3. Yeah, 3
Yep.
p.m. on Friday.
I don't know
Oh, our
what the
information
departments,
security team
government are
has
doing.
to respond. Yeah.
And through this, we were able to start developing a sense of estimates around, known unknowns. And obviously, everyone only wants to estimate things that they know absolutely every single detail about because they want to feel confident in estimates. But that's often not possible. But we were able to learn enough about how their unknowns worked that we were able to develop a good estimate, a good guess around what sort of effort and time things would take. And then, of course, we brought in a lot of good standard practices around the technology management side of things. We introduced risk analysis, our way of doing risk analysis. Obviously, people at the MTC has their own, but we were very transparent with it. And we brought in a shared sense of risk ownership and discussion, technical analysis as well. We really demonstrated that we weren't just going to go randomly making code changes based on random desire. It was going to be, everything was going to be analyzed. We're doing audits of their systems to help them and us prioritize what needed to be upgraded or changed. And then, of course, the impact analysis. We were bringing in impact analysis to make sure everyone outside of not only our team and the team we work with directly at the MTC, but the broader technology and leadership teams at the MTC, knew what the impacts were going to be of everything we did along the way.
Right. And some big takeaways here was it's okay to say that you don't know, because there's self-awareness. And in the beginning of these engagement, you might not know because you still are trying to go through your audits, but you really should follow it up by you'll figure it out. And this shared leadership creates harmony. And I mentioned this before, but one voice is not enough. And I want to stress that 30-day handoff was challenging because it was a huge breadth of information across multiple different technology stacks and process and everything. And we had different teams and different time frames or time zones and that type of thing. And I was facilitating a lot of those. And I have large breadth and depth and certifications across everything that we were touching. But one voice is not enough. It was okay to start with, but it really needed a balance. And because it becomes harmony and people stop listening to one voice, or it may become ignored over time. And plus, sometimes you'll have a team role, like my title didn't align with their expectations of, oh, wait, how do you know about the AWS deep infrastructure and DNS? Because your title is, senior program manager. It's like, oh, well, I actually do all this stuff. The title just shows this. But, also we had to go fast, and trying to spin up the team in a quick way after getting all of this brain dump, it would bottleneck around a single person like me because I was in all the meetings. So we as a group, we wrote it down, we recorded it, and we shared it across the team. So the team is responsible to know, not just one person. So we're at the very beginning, we started with no single point of failure.
Yeah.
But that really was just a tip of the iceberg, and we were seemingly, or not we, it was everybody was seemingly prepared for handoff. That English is funky,
Hey,
but it wasn't really reality.
At first I thought 30 days, that's plenty of time.
Right. Well, it is to a point. And I think that that's the big takeaway. It is to a point. Because some of the people were either prepared in their own way, but they were limited by their role or exposure, the capacity or their knowledge. And that was on the sharing team and the receiving of knowledge team, us. But how did you know it was just the tip? That's a huge thing. And I'm gonna talk a little bit, but I'm gonna make sure Sean has some time here. When I first saw the list of these are the topics we're gonna cover, I've done a lot of these sites before, and I've done a analysis. So I've done it before, and I saw the gaps. Like their list of items was like this small, but the amount of features on their website was huge. And I'm like, wait a second, if you just have this tiny little list, but you have all of this infrastructure and process to cover, that's missing something. And it was missing quite a bit. Yeah, and go ahead, Sean.
I think you've hit it quite well. And 30 days it wasn't enough time. But would 90 days have made it any better, or 180 days? At some point, you just have to jump into the ocean. And yes, you might have to learn how to swim when you're in there. But I think we reached a point, and you reached a tipping point, if you will, of feeling confident enough that we can start moving forward. And I think that's a good segue into this the next area of slides here, which is we establish trust. We establish it through our program approaches and so on and so forth. But then, we moved into the technology side of things. It's a Drupal website that had some very distinct third-party black box technologies built into it and around it, which we had to learn over time. But one thing we didn't have to learn was the Drupal side of things. So, step one is do what you know well, right? So we jumped in and we were able to build the technology trust, if you will, around putting in place practices that we know well. So continuous delivery. We did things like we went through their backlog of just random ideas or ideas they've had over time, issues over time, worked with them to audit it and prioritize it and create a shareable roadmap around how we were going to approach these things. We put in place CI/CD processes and tools that made it more reliable, made our whole deployment system more reliable. That was an aspect that was missing from the past consultancy. And we were able to get some easy wins, fix some obvious problems, put some stuff out, and then start putting in place little fixes, or not little fixes, little features. Features that meant something to them, but aren't necessarily particularly hard for us to do. Things that we could show delight. So we added park and ride lots to the interactive map. We built out their emergency templating system so that they could easily clone it in the case of an emergency, which obviously gave them a good deal of satisfaction and trust. And we enabled the teams at the MTC to be able to make changes themselves much more quickly than they were in the past, and they were prior. And this by doing this sort of things and really demonstrating we know what we're doing, it opened us up to start having the conversations with them around how to start approaching the uncertainty aspects, the uncertainty projects. Some things like well, we had to
Like,
deal
oh my
with
gosh, the Twitter.
the Twitter thing. Yeah, I'm so tired of talking in the world about Twitter. But they rely heavily on Twitter. Elon Musk bought Twitter. Twitter changed everything about itself. The other thing that sort of came up that was never really in the initial things, I don't think it was on the roadmap, was they decided to make a major migration from Acquia to Pantheon, and which stuff that we've been able to do, you can do it, but we had to really manage that in a way that again can't break utilities, and had every step of the way had to continue to work. But doing this, by going through this process, this helped us develop that reliability. It helped us create credibility. And we worked very closely with them. They were able to see the results of our work, which boosted our intimacy score.
And then we started to expand into these known unknowns, and that was all about some of these features integrated to the site that were still stored on the legacy proprietary system, and so they were just kind of being kind of filtered through or sucked through into a Drupal front end. And so, but first of all, we were super like cruising in the ocean, everything's cool, and then we hit the iceberg because all of a sudden, sometimes this utility grade data just stopped flowing through this legacy app. And it was seemingly random at first, but boy, do we know why that breaks all the time and the root cause. But those symptoms and solutions were not conveyed in the handoff, even though we kept asking like, okay, what happens when it breaks? What happens here? There was like, oh yeah, it's okay, and you press a button, and thank goodness we recorded everything, because it was proven. It was like they did not tell us, and we asked. So we had to figure out the root cause while this parts of the utility grade system had been stopped. So under fire, we had to go make sure we went in there, documented it further, and fixed it. And that was challenging. It was a challenge to our reliability, our credibility. Everybody's emotions were up. So it was, how do we handle this together? How do we handle a kind of major outage? I don't want to call it an outage because it wasn't technically out, but it was a major. It was major enough that we had to take it very seriously and fix it. But we also, AngularJS was end of lifing. That was on the legacy system. So we had a movement where we took some of the features that were very Drupalizable very directly, and we started porting them in. So it removed their dependency off of that black box for their business features. It also allowed us to really get into the system and learn it further. But we also created trust. We made further differentiation from the previous team, and it was a good springboard for future change, because everybody had been putting off the black box management or dealing with the legacy system, but this really gave it a springboard of, oh, maybe we should take care of that and fix this for a good thing. So
yeah. All right. So tactics, wow, that's a lot of tactics. And we could fill 50 slides of tactics to help build trust when taking on a new program client and such. Not going to go through these all with you. But I do want to ask you, Aimee, what would be your single most important tactic, if you will, for building trust?
I think being vulnerable and being self-aware, especially if those people there's certain people that can wear many hats. One has to be highly aware of, I'm having this hat on right now, and then in seconds, in the next sentence, I have to put the other hat on, and then the other hat on. So being able to identify that, surface it up to the team, and say, hey, these are all the things that or it could be another person. And this often happens with consultants and architects that are both business and technical savvy. How do you surface the hats up so other people can wear them? And you don't have to be a single point of failure.
Exactly. Yeah, eliminating single points of failure is building in redundancies is key. I would say that from myself, basically any tactic or any combination of tactics and strategies that boost the perception of honesty, vulnerability, as you say, the perception of transparency with clients are these are the most important things that I find that builds trust. All the other technical bits of tactics and such, all very good. But the thing that really moves the needle is having the character of someone who's trustworthy.
Yeah. And honestly, so this tactic for trust, if there was a void for your client, like there was a great big void of knowledge and transparency. So being able to fill that void, even with, lists of documents and videos and information collected, that starts filling that void and that lack of transparency quickly. And it may sound kind of silly of like, why does that list of documents, why is that helpful? Well, it's super helpful because it helps people have conversations. So this really is very real way to actually get to the human side of things through the items and deliverables that you make.
Absolutely. So that all being said, we've talked about how we've built some trust. We started on the technology side with things that we knew how to do, and we could really prove our value there. And we built up enough goodwill, trust, transparency, partnership, if you will, to be able to start innovating. So the two biggest things, we want to move to the next, great. So halfway through the program, we shifted really to developing these two projects and that were going to be very innovative for us. Excuse me. One was replacing the black box, this legacy black box application. Amy's going to talk a bit about that. And then after that, completing a full redesign and re-implementation of the 511 digital system. And when we started with them, we had very basic requirements, if you will. The embarking on any of these projects, the work we did had to be well supported, well documented. We had to put in uptime guarantees. The system would have to be expandable, and also this wonderful requirement of it had to do everything that the past thing did. As just a blanket all requirement. And then lastly, because the MTC is very forward thinking, everything had to be cloud-based and open source.
But what happens when they didn't tell us what it did?
Yeah. So here are the basic tactics that anyone should be following for when engaging in a technology innovation program, right? So we had to define and quantify our measures or KPIs, so on and so forth. Big thing for us and Amy and I in our program is defining and discussing risks and really sharing risk management with the client and the partner to boost trust, but also just boost comfort and such. We had to work with them to define clear business goals. So those ones I had on the previous slide, those are good, but we need to go deeper. And a big aspect of how we work is user needs and user-driven development and not just technology development. And we had to identify the necessary skills that various team members would have to have based on the technology decisions we'd be making, what sort of tools we would need, both internally and what platforms we'd be moving on to, as well as testing and monitoring of anything that we do. But Amy, did you want to speak more about what you just said there, the technical requirements? I skipped over that one.
Oh no, it's okay. So having a loaded question or a loaded requirement, which is just make it do what it last did, especially when it's been legacy, different levels of documentation, and there's a whole bunch of stuff inside the code that still was in the code, but they weren't actively using, but still kind of was running. So first of all, I said, oh, what are your basic business requirements, or what are these things? And it was hard for everybody to get a start. So we started documenting the things that were even inferred, just to make sure when we started, here's the list. And then once that list gets started, then there's conversations. But the technical requirement for this legacy thing, we had the source code for it. So we had to go through and reverse engineer the source code, the endpoints, all of the really deep technical requirements. We had to do deep discovery on and document it for them and for us, so we knew what to build and where we needed to make changes along the way. But it wasn't even to know what we needed to build. We had to also know what to buy. Like we needed those requirements to define the tools required and the skills required. Because we were replacing this legacy opaque system, it's the current words, the current terms. It's an API gateway system, and this API gateway does a few things where it ingests data from multiple places. It then data transformation. It has data cache. It has then it has a gateway with endpoints that the website can come in. There's analytics and uptime around that gateway. There's security around this gateway to just make sure the right web servers can look at it. And then it goes out to the website. Now that's super basic and simple, but there was a lot going on, and that old system had a lot of technical debt. And to be able, it's like getting a big junk drawer and like going through and figuring out what is really your, something that you're needing to do and what do you need to get rid of. It had become a legacy nightmare, and we were responsible for maintaining it. So it was to everybody's best interest to really get onto something that was open source. So
yes. And how to go about making that decision about, how are we going to replace this API gateway? And, Aimee and the team were able to break down and reverse engineer, define the technical requirements of this system. And there were many, well over 100, I think, if I remember. But we needed to make sure too that we weren't just looking at the technical requirements. That again, we had to think about the operability of this system within the wider MTC system, within our own system, our ability to support it. We really wanted to look at user fit, the people who had to actually put data into the system, as well as end users that had to use the map and the data pages and such. We looked across different platforms and vendors for developer fit. If some vendors would have required us to hire a completely different set of engineers to be able to build in that technology. And so that was a low developer fit.
Yeah, and
accessibilities.
I just wanted to jump in. Even to get a short list of the vendors, the terminology that was so legacy that we had to do research to say, what is it called now in the modern software? But we also reached out to create a short list of vendors and technology to look at. We looked at the Forrester Wave and a Gartner research and went through and meticulously scored, like, does it have is it open source? Does it have a cloud platform support? And that helped us really make the short list out of this huge ocean of vendors and technology. And then we could really focus in and actually get into what Sean has here. So
yeah, and you see how some of these things compare just on a point system 1 to 10. Some are on a value system, low, high, medium. Some are just raw costs and such. And that's really what was started with, all these different sorts of criteria and such. So if you want to jump to the next slide, this becomes a very important step. Once you gather up all of those things to compare, you've got to be able to quantify qualitative words, right? So we had to create a measure, like a legend and guidance for how to make these comparisons. As Aimee said, provide the supporting information, and make sure that when we were defining low is 1, low is between 1 and 3 or whatever, low is always between 1 and 3. Because it's very easy to start using opposite terms to start defining the same thing. And then as we sort of broke everything down and were able to create a scoring metric out of it, we did end up in situations where scores are tied. And so just like in, sports playoff scenarios, there's always tiebreaker scenarios to go through. And so I think with this kind of thing, we had to look for deeper criteria to compare against when we ended up with tied scores.
Yeah, and with the API gateway specifically, we had a we had a tie, and it was 2 leading ones, and then we had to talk with the client, the confidence in the vendor, and the trust within the system. Also, they were 2 very technological different stacks. One was like an Azure stack, and the other one was not. One is Azure and .NET, and the other one was Go and on the AWS stack. So that came into play in that. But we also had to reach out to the salespeople and say, hey, what is your vendor roadmap? Like, do you have funding for the next year? Or are you just going to run out of money? So it was a big deal.
Yeah. And so here's, a representation of how that same sort of grid can be broken down by scoring. And, pretty straightforward. It's how we ended up selecting. Interestingly, in the end, by doing this, we ended up selecting a vendor and a product that was not a front runner when we started. And that really reemphasizes the point that just by going with a gut reaction of, oh, what's cheapest, what's immediately going to just do a bunch of technology related requirements that we want, and isn't necessarily the best approach, isn't usually the best approach, I'd say.
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes it was like this one group was way more responsive to us, and even when we called up and said, hey, we're ready to buy something, we just need to learn more about you. And if we got pushback or delays versus like, yeah, we're going to jump in and talk to you, that was a real big sign to the MTC, because it's a utility grade system. They wanted someone who was responsive from the pre-sales, from the very, very start, because that is a sign of future behavior, right?
All right. Speaking of future behavior, we only have a few minutes left and a few slides to go through. So growth mindset. No, this is good. This is great. So the growth mindset, these were successful projects we've engaged in, and all the way along, we've been re-emphasizing everything that we've been sharing with you on this call. And as a result, we've undertaken a full redesign of the 501 systems, visually user-based, full aesthetic redesign, as well as some technology innovation along the way. User research is now much more widely accepted and trusted than it was in the past. We're in the process of replacing another aspect, less opaque, but another third-party vendor-locked system. It's part of the 511, developing even more open data and open source applications for it. So we've really been able to unlock a lot of great innovation and opportunity through this program by following these sorts of approaches. So a couple of strategies we want to leave you with in terms of what you can do as a program manager. Not necessarily, you might not be as technologically advanced as Aimee is. But as a program manager, you need to focus on is developing industry and sector awareness when working with our clients. You need to focus on developing the technology roadmap, not only internally or for your client, but where is the industry going? Where is this technology going that you can continually have this discussion and such with your clients. You don't want to sit around waiting for something to do or waiting for tickets. That's how you sort of fall back from being a partner and end up being more of a vendor or, third-party vendor. You got to be proactive, because ultimately you want to be partners, not vendors. I put in some icons here of, I hear a lot of questions on how do you build a roadmap? How do you share a roadmap? What's a roadmap? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Here are just immediately four of the most common tools for building a roadmap. And I think the number one that is the smallest icon, I put at the top, is Google Sheets, because
Yeah.
this is not something you need technology expertise to build a roadmap.
But it's so important because the vendor didn't, they have lots of roadmaps internally, but
Yeah.
for this program, when we came in, they didn't have one. And what we ended up being able to do is surface not just a roadmap of blob of things, but it was really identified their core line of business, their supported items, and that type of thing. Because a lot of times, and this you'll see this in a lot of projects, they're like, we got to do something for the UX team, but then the SEO team over here needs something, but then we have a Drupal core update. So we were able to put all of that information all in one roadmap so we can see, oh yeah, this activity down here is going to impact that. And we could just balance it out. And it was a game changer for actually grouping work together for efficiency. So we could say, oh, hey, let's do all the park and ride stuff as a group together, including some of the old bugs and stuff. And then it was much more efficient for the team to test, to develop, and also communicate the needs around. It became a holistic conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last really thing here is we had a lot of challenges on this project. So the war in Ukraine started, we had natural disasters and COVID, people had babies and pets and school and all sorts of things. But we still had run into that single points of failure at times because of the speed and in the legacy system. So how fast can you grow a team and transfer, all of this industry knowledge and 30 days later knowledge out to them. But also there was limited domain experience for some parts of the group on these proprietary legacy transportation systems, but also on really complex architectures that are done kind of the older way. And then we also ran into this missing and outdated standard operating procedures of how do I troubleshoot this issue? What do I do to fix it? And so we really wanted to make sure that we can get those done so other people can fix a problem other than yours truly.
Yes, and on the resolution side, I think we've been through, we've said this, be gentle, be human, be empathetic to each other. We're all just people, right? People do projects, people run technology. And good resolutions, mindfully scaling the team to build global redundancy, to get rid of the single point of failure, ask a lot of questions, write everything down, document, share, as we said, track the decisions and conversations along the way. There's a lot of great tools that we learn in the PMI around risk registers, decision logs, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like I have all these certifications and letters, and so does Sean. And when you read them in the book, you're like, when is that ever going to be useful? But it's when there's so much moving and so many different speeds and different times, and you have a huge multi-million-dollar investment and multi-year investment, and there's a lot of people depending on you and the information and stability, they absolutely are grounding for everyone. Oh, we've written that down somewhere. Let me go check. Is so grounding rather than, oh, I don't remember. What was that again? Oh, no. So, set your future self up for success by writing things down. All right. And I think the biggest attitudes to adopt right now from here would be Sean.
Be the digital partners our clients need, right? Focus on building the partnership, the trust, the accountability in the program.
Yeah, put your users' needs first. Yeah, get that low self-orientation, high client orientation, and keep a pulse on your trust quotient. And please consider your full digital ecosystem because it all is connected.
Yeah. And obviously implement the highest value things you can do for a controlled cost. We are still project managers.
Absolutely. Okay, we've said a lot. Any questions or comments, stories to share? And actually, the link to the trusted advisor page, it's really helpful about the trust equation is there. There's lots of nice videos to listen to, so you can listen to the story. It's really helpful.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
Yeah.
This was excellent. Thank you.
I learned so much. It was so informative. I thought that building trust is so important through communication, and I really the fact that roadmaps, that building those
Oh, yeah.
and those actually build trust. So thank you again for
Yeah.
being our presenter for December. Happy holidays, everybody, too.
Happy
Yes.
holidays.
Happy
Thank
holidays.
you. All right.
Everybody take care, stay warm. See you next
Take care.
month.
See you next month.
Absolutely.